The sun was slowly going down over the wide Arizona land, painting the sky with soft gold and orange colors. The wind carried the scent of dry earth, and the soft sound of a horse's hooves could be heard along the dusty trail. Samuel Turner rode quietly, his brown hat tilted forward to block the fading sunlight from his eyes. He had been on the road for days, just him and his horse, moving through land that seemed endless. Samuel was a cowboy, born and raised in the open country. His life was simple and steady. He worked for a ranch, helped move cattle, fixed fences, and lived mostly alone. He had no family waiting for him anywhere and no home to return to. His horse was his only true friend. Over the years, the long, quiet roads had made him a man who didn't expect surprises. He believed each day would look just like the last, quiet, predictable, and without change. But that evening was different. As he reached a small watering hole between two rocky hills, he decided to stop and let his horse drink. The world was calm. The only sound was the water moving gently as his horse lowered its head to drink. Samuel took off his hat, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and let out a slow breath. He liked these moments, when nothing moved except the wind. Then a sound broke the silence. It was soft at first, like the wind carrying a whisper. Samuel froze. He lifted his head, listening carefully. There it was again, a small, shaky voice. It didn't sound like an animal or the wind. It sounded human and scared. Samuel's heart gave a little jump. He slowly reached for the rope on his saddle, not to fight anyone but out of habit. He wasn't used to meeting strangers out here. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. But the soft voice came again, this time a little closer. He turned his head toward a cluster of low bushes near the edge of the water. For a moment, everything was still. Then the bushes moved slightly. A young woman stepped out, her dark hair loose around her face. She wore a simple dress made of soft fabric and carried a small child in her arms. Her face looked tired, and her eyes were wide with fear. Samuel didn't move. He had seen native people before, but always from far away, never like this. She looked at him as if she wasn't sure whether to run or stay. The child in her arms was no more than 3 years old, and it clung to her shoulder like a small bird hiding from the wind. Her lips trembled as she spoke. "Please, don't leave," she said softly. The way she said those words wasn't like a demand or a threat. It was a plea, a quiet, desperate request from someone who had nothing left. Samuel felt something tighten in his chest. He was not the kind of man who ignored people in need, but he was also not the kind who jumped into other people's troubles. For a few long seconds, he just looked at her. The woman took a step forward. The child hid its face in her shoulder. Her feet were dusty and scratched, and it was clear she had walked a long way. Her clothes were worn and dirty from travel, but her posture still showed quiet strength. She wasn't weak. She was simply tired. Samuel spoke carefully, trying not to scare her. "I'm not leaving," he said. "You can come closer if you want." She didn't move right away. Her eyes studied him, not like someone judging, but like someone trying to decide whether to trust a stranger with everything she had. Then she slowly walked closer, holding the child tight against her. Samuel noticed her hands were shaking slightly. She stopped a few steps away, close enough for him to see her face clearly. He had seen many faces on the road, farmers, travelers, soldiers, workers, but there was something different in hers. There was pain, but also something strong behind it. She wasn't just afraid for herself, she was protecting the little one. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then whispered, "Nayeli." It was a name Samuel had never heard before, but it suited her. Gentle and strong. He nodded. "I'm Samuel," he said. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The soft wind moved between them, and the sky grew a little darker. Samuel could see in her eyes that she didn't come here by accident. She was running from something or searching for help. She didn't have to explain it for him to feel it. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She nodded slowly. Samuel took a piece of bread from his saddlebag and held it out carefully. Nayeli didn't rush forward. She waited a second, looking at his hand like someone who had learned to be careful. Then she stepped closer and took the bread. She broke it gently in half, giving the larger piece to the child. Samuel watched as the little one ate quickly, crumbs falling down its small chin. It made him feel something warm inside, something he hadn't felt in years. He lit a small fire near the water and Nayeli sat down at a safe distance. The child curled up next to her. She kept looking around as if expecting something or someone to appear. Samuel didn't ask questions. He knew enough about the world to understand that some stories were too heavy to tell right away. After a while, as the stars started to appear, she spoke quietly. "I walked for many days," she said, her voice thin like a thread. "I didn't know if I would find anyone. I didn't know if I would make it." Samuel looked at her. "You made it," he said gently. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry loudly. She just lowered her head and held the child closer. Samuel felt something shift inside him. He had met many people on the road, but never someone who looked at him the way she did, as if he was the only safe place left in a dangerous world. He didn't know her story yet. He didn't know where she came from or what had happened. But he knew this much. If he got back on his horse and rode away, he would think of her every night. He would remember the way she said, "Please don't leave," and he would regret it. Samuel wasn't a man who liked trouble. He lived by a quiet rule. Help when you can, keep moving, don't get involved too deeply. But this time, something inside him wouldn't let him follow that rule. He looked at Nayeli and saw not just a stranger but a turning point in his quiet, empty life. The night grew colder. Samuel gave her his blanket. She tried to refuse, shaking her head. But he insisted. She finally accepted it, wrapping the child carefully. He sat a short distance away, feeding the fire with small sticks. The stars above were bright and endless. They didn't talk much after that, but they didn't need to. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people understand something without saying it. She had found someone who wouldn't turn away. He had found someone who reminded him that life could change in a single moment. Samuel lay back on the ground looking at the stars. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone on the road. And Nayeli, who had walked for days with nothing but hope, finally let her eyes close, knowing that for this one night, she and her child were safe. Little did Samuel know that this meeting would change everything he thought he knew about life. The cowboy who lived without attachment had unknowingly stepped into a story much larger than himself, and the quiet, tired woman who had whispered, "Please don't leave," would soon become the person who would open his heart to a new way of seeing the world. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the branches, painting the dusty ground with soft patterns. Samuel woke before the sun was fully up, careful not to wake Nayeli and the child. He quietly walked to the waterhole, letting the cool morning air brush against his face. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond his usual routine of riding and working the ranch. Something inside him had changed overnight. When he returned to the camp, Nayeli was already awake, holding the child close. She looked at him with a faint smile that carried both relief and curiosity. It was as if she wanted to ask him 100 questions but didn't know where to start. Samuel handed her a small loaf of bread and a few dried fruits he had in his bag. She accepted them carefully, always keeping the child in her arms. "I thought you might be hungry," he said quietly. She nodded. "Thank you," she replied. The words were simple, but the gratitude behind them was deep, almost unspoken. Samuel noticed that her eyes, which had seemed full of fear yesterday, now held something new, hope. After breakfast, Samuel packed their few belongings. They didn't have much. Nayeli carried the child, while Samuel led the horse with their supplies. The trail ahead was long and uncertain, but neither of them spoke of fear. It was as if saying it aloud might make it real. Instead, they moved carefully, step by step, through the open land. As they walked, Nayeli began to share little pieces of her story. She spoke of her village and the people who had once lived there. She described the songs and stories her family had told her when she was a child, the laughter of her friends and the quiet moments by the river where she used to play. Samuel listened, letting each word sink in. He had never known such a life so full of community, joy, and connection. Yet he could also feel the weight of the loss she carried. For Samuel, hearing her speak was like opening a door to a world he had never imagined. He had always seen life in terms of work and survival, not stories and memories. But Nayeli's words painted pictures in his mind. Of rivers that shone like silver, of dances under the full moon, and of a village where people cared for each other in ways he had never experienced. By midday, they reached a small grove where they decided to rest. Samuel helped Nayeli set down a blanket, and the child, tired from the morning's walk, quickly fell asleep. Samuel watched them for a while, feeling a strange warmth he had never felt before. He realized he cared deeply for these two lives now, not out of duty or obligation, but because he wanted to. "You're very kind," Nayeli said softly. Samuel shrugged. "I do what I can," he replied. He wasn't used to talking about himself, and he didn't know how to explain why he had stayed. It wasn't heroism or bravery. It was something simpler, something almost instinctive. The days passed slowly, filled with careful steps along the trails, quiet conversations, and shared tasks. Samuel showed Nayeli how to care for the horse, how to read the weather from the sky, and how to find edible plants along the trail. In return, Nayeli taught Samuel how to recognize birds by their songs, how to find water hidden under the sand, and the importance of patience and observation. They began to depend on each other in ways they hadn't expected. Samuel discovered that helping someone else brought him a quiet joy he had never known. Nayeli realized that not all strangers were dangerous, and that trust, though fragile, could grow slowly with care. The bond between them deepened naturally, without words rushing to define it. One afternoon, as they rested under the shade of a large oak tree, Nayeli told Samuel about her dreams for the future. She spoke of a place where her child could grow safely, surrounded by people who would care for them. She spoke of gardens, laughter, and learning. Samuel listened quietly. He hadn't thought about the future in this way before. His life had always been about today. Survive, move on, and repeat. But now, he could imagine a future where he wasn't alone, where someone might need him in a way that gave life meaning beyond work or routine. Samuel realized he wanted to be part of that future. He didn't say it out loud, but his actions showed it. He helped Nayeli and the child through rough terrain, carried water, and shared stories at night by the fire. Little by little, trust became friendship, and friendship grew into something deeper. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Samuel and Nayeli sat quietly, watching the stars appear one by one. The child slept soundly in Nayeli's lap. Samuel felt a strange stillness in his heart. Not loneliness, not fear, but peace. For the first time, he understood that life could offer moments of true connection, moments that changed a person's path forever. "I never thought I would meet someone like you," Nayeli said quietly, almost to herself. Samuel smiled, not because of the words, but because he felt the truth behind them. "And I never thought I would meet someone like you," he replied. The journey wasn't always easy. Some days were tiring and the land seemed endless, but they faced each challenge together, learning from each other and growing stronger. Samuel began to notice how brave Nayeli really was, not just in surviving, but in holding on to hope when everything seemed uncertain. He admired her courage and resilience, and he realized that her strength inspired him to become a better man. By the time they reached a small, quiet valley, Samuel felt a sense of accomplishment. They had traveled a long way, and the child had grown stronger with each passing day. Nayeli's smile was brighter now, and Samuel could see the relief in her eyes, a relief born not just from safety, but from finding someone who truly cared. As they settled near a small stream, Samuel and Nayeli built a small shelter, enough for the three of them. It was simple, but it felt like home. For the first time, Samuel understood the meaning of belonging, not just having a place to sleep, but having people who mattered. He knew this was only the beginning of a new life, one filled with shared experiences, laughter, and hope. At night, as the fire crackled softly, Samuel reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought him to this moment. A single plea, "Please don't leave," had changed his life forever. It had led him to a woman and a child who had opened his heart, teaching him that life was richer when shared with others. Nayeli, too, lay awake for a while, thinking about the journey they had made together. She realized that trust once given could bring safety and happiness in ways she had never imagined. Samuel had not just helped her survive. He had shown her that kindness and understanding still existed in a world that often seemed cruel and unforgiving. In the quiet of the night, under a sky full of stars, they both knew that their lives had changed irrevocably. What had started as a chance meeting had grown into a bond that would shape their future. Samuel, the cowboy who had once traveled alone, had found a new purpose. Nayeli, the woman who had walked through fear and uncertainty, had found safety and hope. And together they had begun a journey that would teach them both the true meaning of courage, compassion, and love. Life on the frontier remained unpredictable, but for Samuel, Nayeli, and the child, it no longer felt lonely or hopeless. Every sunrise brought the promise of new experiences, and every step along the trail reminded them that together, they could face whatever came their way. And in that shared journey, they discovered something rare and precious: the power of human connection, the strength found in caring for others, and the way a single act of kindness could change the course of a life forever.